All right, let's dive right in. We're going to tackle a real brain breaker today. A logical knot that's so tight, it's fascinated and totally frustrated some of the greatest minds for centuries. It's a puzzle wrapped up in a simple sentence. A mystery with its roots buried deep in the Middle Ages.
So it all starts with this one, deceptively simple statement. It refers to itself. Just look at it. This is false. Go on, give it a shot. Try to figure out if it's telling the truth or if it's lying. The moment you try to pin a truth value on it, well, something very, very strange starts to happen.
And there's the trap, right there in black and white. If you say, okay, the sentence is true, then you have to believe what it says, which is that it's false. That's a contradiction. So, okay, let's try the other way. Let's say it's false. Well, if the statement, this is false, is a lie, then the sentence must actually be true. You are completely and totally stuck in a perfect, inescapable loop. This, my friends, is the infamous liar paradox.
Now you might think this is just some modern philosophical game, but no way. We're actually rewinding the clock, heading back to a time when logicians basically stepped into an intellectual arena to wrestle with what they called insolubles. And this wasn't some niche hobby either. This was a major field of study, especially back in the 14th century.
They had this great name for these kinds of problems, insolubilia. And what's really interesting is that, unlike a lot of modern thinkers who see these paradoxes as some kind of crisis for logic, the medievals saw them as awesome challenges. They weren't afraid of them. They were puzzles, designed to sharpen the tools of reason.
And believe me, this debate was a marathon, not a sprint. It played out over 3 big historical periods. It started in the late 12th century, then hit this golden age of insane creativity in the 14th century, and it was still being debated and refined well after 1350.
And these medieval thinkers were so creative. They didn't just get stuck on one puzzle. They invented tons of clever variations to really stress test their theories. You had loops like the yes-no paradox, these real-world dilemmas like the bridge paradox, and even completely wild ones like Curry's paradox. Each one was designed to find the weak spots in any solution someone came up with. So, how did the first challengers even try to take this thing apart? Well, their early attempts became the foundation that everyone else would either build on or spend their careers arguing against.
One of the earliest ideas was called cassation, which is a fancy word for just nullifying something. The people who backed this basically argued that an insoluble sentence is just gibberish. It looks like a real proposition, sure, but because it breaks your brain, it fails to actually say anything meaningful. It's like telling the liar, you're not actually saying anything.
Then there was the restriction approach, which was way more direct. This was kind of like a referee blowing a whistle and calling a foul. This theory just straight up outlawed self-reference. It said a proposition can't refer to itself, period. And if a sentence can't point to itself, the paradox can't even get started. Problem solved, right? Well, the issue is that it's a bit of a sledgehammer. It also bans perfectly harmless sentences like, this sentence has 5 words.
But look, those early ideas, they were just the warm-up act. The main event, the real championship bout, was the showdown in the 14th century, and it produced some of the most powerful and sophisticated theories ever designed for the insolubilia.
So, first up in the ring, we've got Thomas Bradwardine. He was an Oxford philosopher, and he argued that these liar sentences are basically carrying some hidden baggage. He believed they secretly mean a lot more than what you see on the surface.
Okay, so Bradwardine's big idea is this. Any sentence signifies not just its obvious meaning, but everything that logically follows from it. He argued that if you really unpack "this is false," it logically forces you to conclude that it is both true and false at the same time. And since it signifies a contradiction, part of what it signifies has to be untrue. For Bradwardine, if any part of a sentence's total meaning is false, the whole thing is false. Case closed.
But in the other corner stood Roger Swineshed, another Oxford guy with a way more radical idea. He didn't think you needed any hidden meanings. He argued that some sentences are just designed to self-destruct.
For Swineshed, a sentence is false if it falsifies itself. In other words, if its own content is the key to proving that it's false. And the liar sentence does exactly that. Its very structure is like a logical bomb that's built to go off. So it's false, not because of some hidden contradiction, but because its whole job is to make itself false. So you see, both of these heavyweight champions come to the exact same conclusion. The liar sentence is false. But they took completely different roads to get there. Bradwardine says it's false because of a hidden flaw in its meaning. Swineshed says it's false because of a fatal flaw in its very function.
Now, Swinehead's theory was hugely controversial, and you can see why. For his logic to work, you have to accept some really mind-bending stuff, like the idea that a false sentence can still accurately describe what's happening, or that a falsehood can logically follow from something that's true, and, get this, that a sentence and its direct opposite can both be false. I mean, these ideas felt like they were breaking the most basic rules of logic.
So, after all these rounds, after all this intense intellectual combat, who was the winner? What was the final verdict on this whole thing? Well, the answer is, in itself, kind of paradoxical. Maybe the most honest conclusion we get is from another one of these logicians, William Heytesbury. After looking at all the different options on the table, he pretty much threw his hands up and admitted that a perfect, totally satisfying solution, it might just be impossible. I love this quote from him: "I do not claim any opinion is altogether satisfying, because I do not see that this is possible."
And that's really the key takeaway. In the end, no single theory got the knockout punch. No one was ever crowned the undisputed champion. The real victory wasn't finding a solution, it was the debate itself. All of that incredible brain power focused on this one problem pushed logic and our whole philosophy of language to a completely new level.
And that leaves us with a final, really provocative thought. This whole medieval showdown suggests that maybe the goal isn't to solve the paradox at all. Maybe its real purpose is to show us the very edge of the map, to reveal the absolute limits of what our language can say, and maybe even what our minds can truly know.